Welcome to this explainer on a seriously groundbreaking AI architecture that is quite literally redefining life or death decisions in healthcare. I'm so excited to share this research with you today because, honestly, we're looking at a massive leap forward in how artificial intelligence internalizes clinical intuition. We aren't just talking about chatbots writing emails anymore. We're talking about an AI that mathematically simulates human physiology to navigate the deadliest condition in the ICU, which is sepsis. Let's dive right in.
Picture this for a second. It's 2 a.m. You're an ICU doctor, the alarms are absolutely blaring, and the chaos is just palpable. You've got a patient right in front of you who's rapidly crashing from septic shock, which is this extreme immune response where blood pressure completely plummets and organs just start shutting down. The research really zeroes in on this. This is the absolute worst kind of stress. You're forced to make split-second decisions about fluid resuscitation and injecting vasopressors, just trying to stabilize a human life. There is literally zero room for error. Now, historically, the one making these calls has always been a human doctor. But what happens when we put an AI in the driver's seat? Well, here's our roadmap for today's explainer to figure that out. First, we'll cover sepsis in the ICU. Then, the book-smart AI problem. Next up, SepsisAgent architecture explained. Then we'll look at the clinical world model, followed by propose, simulate, and refine, and finally, working results and outcomes. All right, Section 2, the book-smart AI problem. Top of their class, but lacking real-world experience.
So let's get into why standard artificial intelligence fundamentally struggles in these super high-stakes, real-time scenarios. It all boils down to what we can call the book-smart AI problem. Standard large language models, or LLMs, are basically like extremely book-smart medical students. They're top of their class, they've memorized every textbook, every paper, every treatment protocol out there. But they've never actually stood at the bedside of a crashing patient to watch how these interventions unfold in real time. For example, a textbook might just say, give IV fluids for low blood pressure. But it doesn't capture the real-time, nuanced degradation of a specific patient's lungs when those fluids are pushed too fast. Standard AI just blindly recites the textbook without anticipating the actual physical consequences. Which brings us to Section 3, SepsisAgent architecture explained, building a bedside clinician. To fix this massive blind spot, researchers engineered an entirely new architecture called SepsisAgent. It's literally designed to act like a seasoned bedside clinician, actively and mathematically simulating a patient's physiological future in its mind before doing anything in reality. Let's break down the math from the paper. The whole thing starts with a foundational variable, the patient state, or S sub t. Now, this variable is absolutely crucial. It's not just a single number. It's a massive, multidimensional vector capturing everything happening to the human body right at this current exact moment, t. We're talking heart rate, oxygen saturation, temperature, respiratory rate, live lab results, all frozen together in that chaotic moment. Given this incredibly detailed snapshot of the patient, the LLM acts as an agent. It looks at the data and proposes a candidate action set, which is mathematically represented as C sub t. This set includes multiple potential treatments. It's essentially saying, okay, based on what I see, we could try action 1, action 2, or action 3. Now, standard AI usually stops right there. It just picks an action based on text pattern matching and spits it out. But in an ICU, that's incredibly dangerous. How do we know which action is actually the safest? Well, that brings us to Section 4, the clinical world model, a flight simulator for human physiology. To solve this problem of testing interventions safely, the researchers augmented the AI with a clinical world model. Take a look at this equation straight from the research. For each candidate action, this model actually estimates the physiological consequence. It takes the current patient state, S sub t, combines it with a proposed action, A sub t, and runs it through the model's parameters to output a prediction, Y hat sub t. This Y hat sub t output is predicting exactly what the patient's future physiological state and overall outcome will be if that specific action is taken. To put it simply, think of this world model like a crazy high-fidelity flight simulator, but for human physiology. Before an airline pilot flies a new plane into a severe thunderstorm, they're going to test it in the simulator first, right? SepsisAgent does the exact same thing. It tests out the turbulence of different medical interventions in its simulated environment first, figuring out what'll happen before a single drop of medicine ever enters the patient's veins. All right, Section 5, propose, simulate, and refine, the SepsisAgent workflow. This right here is the core engine of SepsisAgent, showing how it actually operates at inference time.
The paper outlines a really structured step-by-step workflow that the AI cycles through in this unique propose, simulate, and refine loop. First, it proposes that candidate action set we just talked about. Second, it queries the world model to simulate the outcomes of those actions. And third, it refines and commits. It compares all these simulated action response pairs and chooses the final treatment by finding the simulation that yields the highest predicted survival reward. Looking directly at the working data from the paper, we can actually see SepsisAgent thinking through its options. It's projecting out the patient's mean arterial pressure, or MAP, and their lactate levels, and these numbers matter a lot. Under option 1, the simulated MAP is a dangerous 58. A MAP of 58 means the vital organs are actively starving for blood. Under option 2, we get a lactate level of 3.1, which signifies severe cellular stress. The body is actively dying. But look at option 3. The simulated MAP stabilizes at 72, comfortably above the clinical threshold of 65, alongside a much healthier lactate level of 1.8. What the AI is actually doing here is weighing the severe physiological consequences of different real-world interventions. It's asking itself, should I push more IV fluids, or should I switch to injecting vasopressors to clamp down the blood vessels? It runs the simulation for both to see exactly which combination stabilizes the crashing patient's vitals the best over time, just like we saw with that stabilized MAP of 72.
Finally, Section 6, Working Results and Outcomes, Making the Tough Call. So what actually happens when SepsisAgent is put to the test in a high-stakes, life-or-death scenario? Does it just follow rigid textbook rules? Well, in the specific scenario detailed in the research, it does something entirely unexpected. Faced with a crashing patient, it intentionally chooses a treatment path, Action B, where it actively decides to taper fluids. By doing this, it knowingly accepts a suboptimal, short-term MAP score of 63. This is a huge deal. Standard medical protocols rigidly dictate pushing fluids until the MAP is 65 or higher. The AI is intentionally breaking the rules. The crucial takeaway here is that the AI intentionally misses the short-term textbook goal. Why? Because the clinical world model allowed it to see the bigger picture. Pumping the patient full of fluids just to chase a perfect short-term blood pressure metric forces fluid to leak into the lungs, basically causing the patient to drown, a fatal condition known as pulmonary edema. SepsisAgent literally saw this coming in the simulator. Instead, it chose to protect the patient's lungs, prioritizing long-term survival over a short-term numerical target.
By having the clinical intuition to actually break the standard rules, SepsisAgent achieves the ultimate undeniable outcome. It successfully keeps the patient alive. It stabilized the patient by looking steps ahead rather than just reacting blindly to the immediate alarms. Which leaves us with a pretty profound final thought as we look to the future of medicine. If an artificial intelligence can successfully internalize clinical intuition well enough to intentionally break textbook protocols just to save a human life, we really have to ask, how long until every single ICU bed has a clinical world model running silently in the background? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this deep dive helps you understand just how transformative this technology is about to be.